How was it like for you to pull away from that perfectionistic high finish to something more, I guess, with more movement and as you say, actually, that you try to find the essence. That you said that that was your goal to basically remove detail. How has that journey been like for you?
Um, well, I guess it's funny because at the time, well, I guess before I was in art school, I still have uh, all the drawings that I was doing, but I got really fascinated with. I'm very detail oriented in my work. Like,
Hmm.
if my work looks loose, that's something that I sort of um, like fought for, or like had to dig out of the ground, you know. Um, because I have some stuff. This one in particular, this David Bowie drawing I did, it's dated. I think I was 19 when I did it. It probably took 100 hours, and it was from the Changes One album cover, whatever. Um, but it's done in pointillism with the repeatograph, like with the 0.13 repeatograph pen, which was by far the finest one. Repeatograph pens were just you had to put the ink in, and but the finer they were, the more precision, but they would tend to clog because the little hole was so, and it was so frustrating, these things. But like when it was flowing, and I just would sit there and work out. But I mean, prior to that, even I've done some with maybe a bigger nib, and I was just fascinated with how to make. I didn't know the term value at the time, but that value is, you're an artist, it's it's the whole deal, kind of. But the I was just fascinated with finding different ways, and this goes back to even like in grade three. I would just do these pattern things where, and you kind of start to figure out, like, it's either dark or it's light, right? It's either like this is nothing without that, if you know what I mean. Like, it's I even say that to students. It's sort of uh like, first of all, don't paint the thing, paint the shape. And second of all, don't paint the shape, paint the shape next to the shape. And uh it's kind of a head scratcher, but it's because that whole thing with negative space and everything, I never quite really, that never really resonated with me. But anyway, getting back to I'm taking a long route to get to.
You're good.
You asked about the you know the looseness. That's why I just sort of had to go back and say that my my first instinct was always just like as much detail as possible. Make it look like more than a photograph. Um, and so anyway, just doing that, and even to the point where I truly believe that I had invented cross hatching and pointillism, because like no one else has ever, like, I just, little did I know. I mean, I think Dürer was doing cross hatching in the 1400s, and pointillism, like, anyway. But when you're sort of in your own little world, and I guess I probably had seen it before,
Hmm.
but it's like, no, I came up with this. So anyway, that um, when I started working with watercolor and animation, um, well, I had started with it before that at this visual arts center I took. I didn't do any, probably really, no, I didn't do any watercolor when I was in university. There it was oil and acrylics. Um, but it really was and I love the idea of, like, yeah, the smoothness and the precision of watercolor, which it can be. Um, and that was another thing. When I was pretty young, I set up these 4 still lifes. I did them from life, and one was with a beer, and it was all like snacks, bags of chips, Cheetos, and things with like a Coke or a beer or whatever next to it. And I just set up these still lifes. I still kind of set up still lifes like that. You can probably see them behind me. Um, but they were pretty rendered. Um, but it literally was, and this is well, probably mid 80s, mid to late 80s. I was just in a bookstore and I was in the art section like I always was. And back when books were really a thing, you know, like
Hmm.
even that, just to go back a little bit, when I was in Concordia, the library where the art books were was in this old building where you had to go up to the 11th floor and walk back down to the fourth floor for whatever reason. But I would literally spend hours in there. It was literally like you would be, you know, just flipping on your iPad through, you know, through work. But it was the only, like, Honoré Daumier and Degas and Rembrandt, and I would just, you know, uh, spend hours and hours there. But anyway, so I was in this bookstore and I saw this cover just kind of struck me, and it was Painting What You Want to See by Charles Reed. I never heard of Charles Reed before, and it just the cover was like, oh my god. I picked it up and I started flipping. It's like, oh my god, like you can do this with watercolor. And it was splattery, it was super loose, it was all kinds of vignettes, you know, and he would just let it drip down sometimes, just, and it's like, wow, that it was kind of an epiphany, you know. um, so I bought it and took it home, and I mean, it's sort of a quasi instructional book. So there was exercises to do, and I did them all probably numerous times, but it was so much more than that, you know. And he was an oil painter too, fantastic oil painter. His oil paintings were loose, but he was primarily a watercolor painter, and that book just kind of changed everything for me, you know. It's like, okay, you know, I'll do commercial art for as long as I need to, but I want to be a painter someday, you know. Um, and of course, you know, especially when you latch onto something like that, so you try to paint like him, you know, and of course it's going to be terrible, and it was, but I still believe it was a worthwhile, you know, and I probably did that a million times after with different painters who you admire, you know, and it's like you just see and it's like, oh, okay, that's how I'm going to do it now, right? You know,
Hmm.
uh, and of course that works for them, you know.
Yeah.
It takes so long to kind of develop your own thing.